If you're watching the market boards right now in Chicago, New York, and Toronto, you're seeing something that hasn't happened in 47 years. Red across every sector, manufacturing futures down 9.3% in 11 minutes. The Canadian dollar didn't crash like Trump predicted. It actually ticked up 1.2% because traders know something the White House doesn't want to admit. Mark Carney just called their bluff, and 420,000 American jobs are now hanging by a thread that's already starting to fray. Before we go any deeper into what just happened in that room, make sure you hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us whether you think Carney made the right move walking out or if this is going to hurt working families on both sides of the border. Your engagement is what keeps this independent analysis alive and free from corporate filter. 47 minutes ago, inside a secure conference room 3 floors below the West Wing, the most important trade negotiation in North American history collapsed in less than 8 minutes. We know the exact timeline because 3 different sources, 2 from the Canadian delegation and 1 from the U.S. Trade Representative's office, have now confirmed the sequence of events. President Trump walked in 14 minutes late. No apology, no explanation, flanked by Peter Navarro and Robert Lighthizer, the same team that tried and failed to bully Mexico in 2019. Trump didn't sit down. He stood at the head of the table, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and slid it across to Prime Minister Mark Carney. The document, which we've now seen a photograph of, was titled Executive Tariff Framework Revision Proposal. It wasn't a proposal, it was a ransom note. The demand was simple and impossibly destructive. Trump wanted Canada to accept a 34% blanket tariff on all steel, aluminum, and auto parts exports to the United States unless Canada agreed to 3 conditions. Condition 1, dismantle the dairy supply management system within 90 days. Condition 2, ban all Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers from using Canadian factories as backdoor entry to the U.S. market. Condition 3, and this is the one that broke the camel's back, pay a border security fee of $2,140 per commercial truck crossing into the United States to fund what Trump called the Northern Wall Initiative. Carney looked at the paper for maybe 30 seconds. He didn't touch it. He didn't pick it up. Sources say he just stared at it like it was a restaurant menu written in crayon. Then he did something no Canadian Prime Minister has ever done in a face-to-face meeting with a sitting U.S. president. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, looked directly at Trump and said, "Mr. President, we came here in good faith to discuss partnership. You've presented us with extortion. Canada doesn't negotiate under threats, and we certainly don't pay protection money. This meeting is over." And then Mark Carney walked out. He didn't wait for a response. He didn't let Trump save face with some kind of compromise offer. He just left. His entire delegation followed him in single file. No handshakes, no goodbyes, just the sound of chairs scraping and the door closing with a soft click that might as well have been a gunshot. The American side sat there in stunned silence for a moment, and then, according to our source, Trump turned to Lighthizer and said, "What the hell just happened? He can't do that. Get him back in here." But Carney was already in his car heading to the Canadian embassy. Within 19 minutes of that walkout, Carney's office released a statement. It was 4 sentences long, but it detonated like a tactical nuke across every trading floor from Wall Street to Bay Street. The statement read, "The Government of Canada entered today's discussions prepared to negotiate in partnership. We were instead presented with demands inconsistent with the sovereign interests of Canadians. Effective immediately, Canada is initiating a comprehensive review of all cross-border trade dependencies, with particular focus on critical energy exports and rare earth supply chains. We remain open to respectful dialogue when the United States is ready to engage as an ally rather than an adversary." That phrase, critical energy exports, those 4 words just put 11 U.S. states on notice that their power grid might be about to experience what economists call a managed interruption. Let me translate that for you. Carney isn't threatening to flip a switch and turn off the lights. He's threatening something far more sophisticated and far more painful. He's going to slow down the flow, create uncertainty, inject risk premiums into every energy futures contract, and let the market do the punishment for him. Let me show you the receipts, because this isn't speculation. This is game theory playing out in real time with your heating bill as the stakes. Receipt 1, the infrastructure choke point. Right now, at this exact moment, Canada supplies 61% of the crude oil that flows into the Great Lakes region. That oil feeds refineries in Toledo, Detroit, and Chicago. Those refineries produce the gasoline that powers Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Indiana. If Canada decides to review those export licenses for national security reasons, the same legal framework Trump loves to use, those refineries don't shut down overnight, but they start operating at reduced capacity within 3 weeks. When refineries run below optimal capacity, the cost per gallon doesn't go up by pennies, it goes up by dollars. We're not talking about $4.50 a gallon, we're talking about $7.80 a gallon by late March. Receipt 2, the employment cascade. The tariff Trump is threatening, 34% on auto parts, sounds like it punishes Canada, but here's the reality that his advisors either don't understand or don't care about. A single automobile assembled in the United States crosses the Canadian border an average of 7 times during production. A transmission casing made in Ohio gets shipped to Ontario for machining, comes back to Michigan for assembly, goes back to Canada for electronic integration, and returns to the US for final installation. If you slap a 34% tariff on each of those crossings, the effective cost increase on a single vehicle isn't 34%, it's 238%. Ford, GM, and Stellantis have all run the numbers. We've seen the internal memos. If this tariff goes into effect, they shut down production lines in Dearborn, Lordstown, and Spring Hill within 6 weeks. That's not 420,000 jobs theoretically at risk. That's 420,000 jobs with termination notices already being drafted in HR departments right now. Receipt 3, the political math. Here's what makes this entire situation so reckless. Of those 420,000 jobs that are about to disappear, 316,000 of them are in states that Trump won in 2024 by margins of less than 3%. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio. These are the states that delivered him the White House. These are the states where union workers believed him when he said he'd bring back manufacturing. And now he's about to obliterate those jobs because he couldn't handle a Canadian prime minister who refused to bow. The United Auto Workers hasn't issued a statement yet, but they don't need to. Their silence is deafening. Usually when Trump announces any kind of trade protection, the UAW is the first one cheering. Go check their Twitter feed right now. Go look at their press release page. Nothing. Because they know that Carney just flipped the script. Carney made Trump choose between his ego and his voters, and Trump chose ego. Receipt 4, the market knows. You want to know who believes Carney has the leverage? Follow the money. Within 40 minutes of that statement, S&P 500 futures dropped 1.7%, Dow futures dropped 2.1%, but Canadian TSX futures only dropped 0.4%. Why? Because the market understands that Canada sells commodities and America sells consumer goods. When there's a trade war between a commodity exporter and a consumer market, the commodity exporter always wins in the short term because people need heat and gasoline more than they need new iPhones. Treasury bond yields spiked because investors are now pricing in the risk that the Federal Reserve is going to have to raise interest rates to combat the inflation wave that's about to hit from energy cost increases. The market just told you in the span of less than 1 hour that Carney made the right move and Trump made a catastrophic miscalculation. So why did Trump do this, and why is it spiraling out of control faster than anyone in his administration expected? We need to understand the psychology of the bully and why that psychology doesn't work anymore in 2026. Trump's entire negotiation playbook is based on a script written in the 1980s when America was the only consumer market that mattered. The formula was simple: threaten to close access to American consumers, wait for the other country to panic because they need to sell to Americans more than Americans need to buy from them, accept a minor concession, declare total victory, move on. He did it to Japan with cars. He tried it with China on trade. He attempted it with Europe on defense spending. But that playbook assumes the other side needs you more than you need them. It assumes you're negotiating with a country that depends on access to your market for their survival. Canada isn't that country. Canada doesn't sell you cheap electronics that you can buy from Vietnam. Canada doesn't sell you clothing that you can buy from Bangladesh. Canada sells you the inputs that your entire civilization runs on. Energy, water, minerals, timber, the things that you cannot replace with a different supplier because there is no different supplier at that scale and that proximity. When Trump walked into that room, he thought he was negotiating with a subordinate. He thought he was dealing with Justin Trudeau 2.0, someone he could steamroll with volume and vulgarity. But Mark Carney isn't a politician. He's a central banker. He's the guy who stabilized the British economy during Brexit. He's the guy who managed Canada through the 2008 financial crisis without a single bank failure. Carney doesn't think in terms of poll numbers and approval ratings. He thinks in terms of leverage ratios, risk premiums, and structural dependencies. When Trump slid that piece of paper across the table, Carney didn't see an insult. He saw an opportunity. He saw a chance to recalibrate the entire power dynamic of the North American relationship in a single move. Notice what Carney didn't do. He didn't yell. He didn't call Trump names. He didn't appeal to shared history or invoke the memory of soldiers who fought together. He just left. Because Carney understands that Trump's superpower is chaos. Trump thrives when people engage with him emotionally, because emotion clouds judgment and creates opportunities for him to dominate the room. By walking out, Carney refused to play the game. He turned the tables and made Trump the one chasing, Trump the one who looks weak, Trump the one who has to explain to Michigan auto workers why their plant is closing. Carney's strategy is what military theorists call strategic patience. Trump needs a win today because his news cycle is measured in hours. Carney is playing for the quarter, for the fiscal year. By threatening the energy review, Carney just put every single Republican senator from a border state on the phone with the White House screaming at Trump to back down. He outsourced the pressure. He made Trump's own party do his negotiating for him. And there's something even deeper happening here that most people are missing. This is the first time in modern history that a Canadian leader has looked at the United States and said, "We don't need you more than you need us, and we're willing to prove it." For 80 years, Canadian foreign policy has been built on a single assumption: keep America happy. Compromise when necessary, smile through the insults, take the smaller piece of the pie because challenging the United States is national suicide. Mark Carney just lit that assumption on fire and walked out of the room while it burned. He's betting that the world has changed. He's betting that in 2026, America is more isolated, more erratic, and more vulnerable than at any point since 1945. He's betting that Europe, Asia, and even parts of Latin America are tired of American bullying and looking for an alternative model. And he's betting that Canada, quiet, polite, boring Canada, can be that model. The doctrine emerging from Ottawa, some are already calling it the Carney doctrine, is simple: we will trade with you, we will cooperate with you, but we will not be subordinate to you. If you treat us as a partner, we'll act like a partner. If you treat us as a colony, we'll remind you that we're a G7 economy with the resources you can't live without. It's cold, it's calculated, and it's the first time in history an American president has been checked by a Canadian prime minister. Now let's talk about what this means for you, whether you're watching this in Michigan or Alberta or California. This isn't just a trade dispute between politicians in expensive suits. This is the unraveling of the most integrated economic zone in human history. For over a century, the US-Canada border was functionally invisible for commerce. Trucks flowed back and forth, parts moved seamlessly, supply chains ignored the imaginary line on the map. That border is about to become very, very visible. If this standoff continues, if Trump doesn't back down and Carney doesn't blink, here's what happens in the next 60 days. Auto plants in Detroit, Toledo, and Oshawa start announcing temporary shutdowns. Temporary becomes permanent by summer. The 420,000 jobs at immediate risk are just the first wave. Every job lost in manufacturing creates a ripple effect. The diner across from the plant loses customers, the real estate market softens, the tax base shrinks, schools cut programs. Economic models suggest that for every direct manufacturing job lost, another 2.3 service sector jobs disappear within 18 months. You're not looking at 420,000 jobs, you're looking at close to 1.4 million jobs gone by the 2026 midterms. Energy costs in the northern states spike. We're talking about heating bills in January doubling. Gasoline hits $8 a gallon in Wisconsin. Inflation, which Trump promised to crush, roars back to life because energy costs touch everything. Food prices go up because trucks cost more to run. Clothing prices go up because factories cost more to power. Everything gets more expensive, and wages don't keep up. But the deeper damage is to credibility. If the United States can't maintain a functional trade relationship with Canada, the friendliest, most similar neighbor it has, how can anyone trust American commitments? How can South Korea believe the U.S. will defend them if the U.S. is picking fights with Ottawa? How can Europe rely on NATO if the president is threatening to kneecap the Canadian economy over dairy tariffs? Trump is systematically destroying the architecture of American power, not through military defeat, but through sheer incompetence and ego. Every ally is watching this and making contingency plans. Every adversary is watching this and taking notes. The message being sent is clear: America is unreliable, America is erratic, America cannot be trusted. And the tragedy, the real gut punch of this entire disaster, is that it was completely avoidable. There was a deal on the table.